Hey everybody, Captain Murphy here. Today we're looking at the HM Frigate Unicorn version 1.2. This one is the updated model that I was talking about in the last video. That it is a very heavily updated model, a little more running rigging. It has a much more detail, such as on the guns. We've added more of the ropes and some of more of the little fine details on them. And we've done a ton of optimizations. The first major optimization is that we have switched from a real-time lighting system, which allowed the day-night cycles to be modified, to one that is just a static lighting system. So there's no opportunity to change the light, to change the day-night cycle. In order to do the kind of optimization we wanted, we really had to make that last decision. And then we kind of ran into a lot of issues because of the complexity of the model and the narrow spaces everything is in. We had a lot of, I'd say, hell trying to get Unity's lighting system to bake correctly. So we actually had to buy an asset to do the light baking and try to get most of it ironed out. So this has been a long process. Having never really spent a lot of time working on Unity's lighting system other than doing real time, this was a real learning curve that we weren't prepared for. And it's taken us a lot longer to get this out than we were kind of hoping for. But I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a quick tour, kind of point out some of the neat things, and hopefully show off the new broadside. So the first thing you'll notice is that the textures are modified. They're dirtier, they're more noise, there's actually tar in between the deck planks. Everything looks a little worn, a little bit dirtier than it was before. That's by design. We wanted to kind of show a ship that was a little more lived in than a nice, perfectly clean vessel. And it's going to continue as the model gets more detailed. We're going to add in a little more specific dirt layers that correspond to like where the guns are, where the cannonballs are. We're going to try to make it look as photorealistic as we can without costing a ton of optimization. So like with our light baking, we're going to add another UV layer to try to add in some more dirt and make it look a more realistic. So yeah, so all the textures have been heavily modified and redone. If you do get a chance to play this demo, the killer right now is the loading screen takes right around 60 to 90 seconds to get started. And that's because a lot of these are bitmap to material substances, and they have to bake every single time they load up. Well, we've been going through and trying to cut that down, but every time we do that, we're kind of trading off the loading screen optimization for the size of the project. And initially the size was only around like 200 and some megabytes. Now we're looking at around 1 gig, and only about half of the substances have been baked out to static textures. So it's going to get bigger over time. We've also baked in a lot of the light mapping, and that's kind of cost us quite a bit of size. We're going to end up having to do some changes as we've gone through and done the light mapping. You can see like the ropes didn't quite bake very well, so we're going to have to take those and manually unwrap the UVs and try to make them a little cleaner. Some of the cannonballs kind of came out funny. Little stuff, real random things we had some issues with. But for the most part, it came out pretty good. This version is also, you know, like I said, with higher optimization. I've replaced the settings screen, and you can kind of ignore this meter in the top corner. That's not really accurate. Most of the time you're about 20 FPS slower on that number than you actually are. So take that for what you will. It depends on your system. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's not. It's kind of a Unity issue. But you can modify all the settings in here. So that way if you are running a little slow, you can modify it and bring it up to speed for your system. So you can modify what kind of color correction and all that you want as well. So let's go ahead and wander around here. You'll notice that we've got some netting in place on the lifelines, whereas before we just had the lines themselves. We've got on the waist here, we've got a couple of longboats ready to go out. So we've got 2 launches sitting here. Now, the one thing that someone brought up, one of our more eagle-eyed observers, is that the waist where these are sitting on most ships around that period, the late 1790s to the early 1800s, would have had an open area in here, like an open space. But we did this by design. The actual Unicorn staff and one of their modelers said that this model, this design of the Leader class frigate would not have had an open waist. It would have been blanked over just like this, even when it came out of Ordinary. So this is actually a true to the design choice here. So this is unlike the Trincomalee, which has an open waist, the Unicorn would not. You can see our new stove right there. We've got the little cooking going on. The bell's a little extra shiny, but it looks pretty good. You can see all our nice little dirt textures. Everything looks a little worn, a little gritty. We'll go ahead and while we're up here, let me see if I can crawl up here. I did this the other day. Oh well, let's fire the guns. So I stole the particle effects and the smoke and all that fun stuff out of our Tides of War game and kind of reutilized it here since it looked so good over there. And considering it was not originally made for first-person usage, I'd say it looks pretty good. It's a lot more optimized too with the new Unity system. We'll go ahead and fire them again. Oh yeah, definitely pretty good. Alright, so let's go ahead and continue our little tour here. Let's go down to the gun deck. Now here's where a lot of changes have happened. The guns are, again, more detailed. They got a couple of the ropes. There's not a lot of the tackle on them. There's a lot of tackle missing that would have been on the aft parts of them. Would have been coming towards the center line of the ship. There's a return tackle, then there's two tackle to go forward. We're not going to put all that just because it's not really necessary. But it does look good. It's just, it's a little too much poly for what you gain. And again, all the light is now baked, so we can get a little more accurate texturing on the UV light maps. Let's go into the captain's cabin, where a lot of changes have gone on. So as you can see, it's now fully furnished. So we've got a bookcase, some paintings, a couple of chests. One thing I am kind of rather proud of is being able to get the lighting on these curtains to show through translucent. Talk about a goofy pain in the butt, but it actually looks really good. We've actually got a couple of models in here. If you've played Tides of War, you might recognize them. These are the brigs from the Tides of War game. We just kind of reutilized them here. These are the very low poly ones we tried in the last build of Tides of War. And so that's one of them that you can sail around on. That's the Ontario. And now again, like I was saying about the waist, that's what the waist area would have looked like on some of the ships of this period. All right. So you can see the nice wood textures. This is Lord Horatio Nelson. All right, let's go wander around forward here. And if you don't like the lens flare and that bloom, you can actually turn that off in your settings. One thing I did want to point out, and it's hard to actually see because we're going to add some lighting up here soon, is the new stove. This is donated to us by Drake's Legacy. It's a fantastic modeler that we've worked with before on the Hearts of Oak project. And this is an absolutely perfectly accurate period stove that he donated to the project. And this would have been in the Unicorn, would have been in a lot of the period ships at that time. So we're going to add a couple lights up in this area. We didn't originally have them in the design because we didn't have a fancy stove to show off before. We're going to add a couple lights up here to show off this fantastic piece of modeling work, hopefully in the next couple of builds. Alright, so let's go down to the living quarter deck. And if we go towards the aft, we can go into the wardroom. This is where all your senior officers would have dined and lived. We have one of the cabins open, so you can see the size that one of the cabins would have been and how tall the people would have been. These are about 5.5 feet. They're pretty short people. And this is the tiller coming through for the rudder, and that's some of the tackle that would have been in place. And we're going to pass by some of the other cabins here, down to the crew's mess. And so here's it, all set up for crew mess. and this all could have been triced up and put away. Here's some of the hammocks that the crew would have been sleeping in. There's your 20 inches of space right there. We went ahead and added a bunch of cargo around here. These ships would have operated for about 6 months without any, touching land, so there would have been cargo stuffed in every nook and cranny that they could fit around here. So this is pretty accurate to what would have happened on the real ships. It probably would have been a little neater than this, but as time goes on, they would have rearranged things. So we're going to go ahead towards the aft, and we'll go down to the orlop deck, which is where the rest of the cargo is stored. Alright, so we got a couple more openings over here. We got some more rooms. And again, the light map baking kind of went crazy there. And here's some more of the orlop. So you can see all the way to the forward, this thing is full of barrels and crates and boxes. You can see the main mast inside there. So there was a lot of cargo inside this little space. And like I said, they would have been operating for up to 6 months at a time without any other provision. So that's quite a bit of water and food and everything from extra clothing and duck cloth. So there's a lot of supplies that would have had to been brought on board. So that's kind of the quickie tour. The one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the top deck and kind of show off something else. So right now we're running at about 65 to 70 FPS. I think my my screen cap is showing me that I'm actually sitting at about 75. So, and this is with all my effects running, and I'm only running a pretty generic, like a 780, but nothing fancy. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fire up a Xbox controller, and I'm going to enable VR. So let's go ahead and toggle VR. And since I don't like depth of field, I'm going to turn that off because it just bugs me in the VR mode. And everything else looks okay. I don't really care for bloom in that. So that should pretty well do it. Yeah. Alright. So, okay. So there you go. Now you can actually walk around the ship in VR. It's actually very smooth. It was surprising how smooth it really was the first time we tested it, because we weren't quite expecting that it didn't have the hiccups that the old version did. And I'm guessing something was wrong with the real-time lighting, as when we started to do some of the builds, the real-time lighting was absolutely killing the VR section. It was causing us to have these horrible spikes in performance in our profiler. And when we moved over to the baked lighting and took out some of the dynamic clouds and other things like that, we're sitting very pretty at about 75 FPS. So this thing is much more VR capable. And again, it's not, I won't say it's 100% VR ready, but it's definitely a lot better than it was before. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it, and be sure to stop by itch.io and download a copy and take a look at it. We're going to add some more features in. We're looking at adding in some interactive displays, talking about the guns, kind of the same thing that I did with that tour real quick, is kind of walking the player through and talking about things in the ship, and hopefully making it into a real interactive experience. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks.